Hey everyone, this is Matt Gunlock from the 3GIQ podcast. I'm here with my co-host Frank Gal, and we have a very special guest. We got Nick Thayer from the Tactical Games. He is currently their president and pretty much the head of their PR team. So, Nick, before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, can you kind of introduce yourself and where you're from, your competitive shooting background, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Frank, Matt, thank you guys very much for having me out. I really appreciate it. Again, I work for the Tactical Games. Been with the company for about a year and a half. Came on helping out with marketing and loved it. Loved the sport. Love being a part of it. I started out as a competitor. My first shooting competition was the Tactical Games. I was putting on an event with a nonprofit that I used to run at a 511 tactical store. The manager of the store said, "Hey, you like shooting? You like fitness? These two things come together in this sport. Go and check it out." So I jumped on their Instagram. I got linked up with Nate and Blair Drum, two incredible friends that I still have to this day. They talked me, just gave me all the basic information that I needed to know. I went out and I bought a SIG MCX and a Legion, an X5 Legion, and I went and competed in Meridian 2 weeks later. So my competitive shooting background is completely in the Tactical Games. I've done some local matches. As far as I shot 2-gun and a 3-gun competition, and then I've shot some carbine stuff as well. Just out there having fun, and that was all after I got into shooting because of the Tactical Games. I started learning how beneficial it would be to go out and shoot 2-gun matches, to shoot carbine matches, move and shoots, things like that, especially as we're rolling those into those stages into typical Tactical Games, right? So outside of that, I don't have a competitive shooting background. I get my ass kicked when it comes to shooting quite often. It was always the running joke. Like, I was one of the fittest dudes out there, and then I'd go to the line and it would look like I was shooting fucking shotgun. Like, I mean, you're talking like everybody talks so much shit to me. I spent last year really honing in on my shooting. I'm now living in Texas, so some of the greatest shooters in the entire world live here. So I get the opportunity to shoot with Jared all the time, who's an absolutely incredible shot. A lot of the 3-gunners that are out here that he used to run with in that community. So I've been working on that. That's the one thing that I definitely, I think everybody in the sport can spend more time on shooting for sure.
Yeah, you're out of Austin, right?
Correct. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
a little
so
bit north.
So you got Dan Jurasek that's out there that's kind of
Yeah.
close. Dan and Ben Jurasek. And Dan's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
I love him to death. Anytime I know him from the 3-gun world.
Sure.
So like, yeah, he's an absolute beast when it comes to shooting, and his fitness has just gone up too.
Yeah. And like I shoot a lot with Garrison England, who was
Yep.
Garrison's out here. Aaron Hayes is out here.
Oh yeah.
Steve Wynn, Jared, all these guys. There's another guy named Jeremy. Most people have never even heard of him. He's kind of like a ghost. He was actually Jared's partner in the sniper challenge. I respect the hell out of every shooter that I shoot with. Watching him, he shoots open. Watching him shoot open is one of the craziest freaking things I've ever seen in my entire life. The guys that are good at that shit, you're sitting there and it's like,
It's slow motion. It's almost slow motion because they are so efficient with every movement that they do that it's like, how are they shooting so fast?
it's
Like
like godlike.
yeah,
It is incredible. It is
like
incredible.
like one of my favorite individuals to watch shoot is James Gill. Like,
Oh yeah, Gil's awesome.
I
Yeah.
mean, we've had Gill on here before, and like one eye, one leg, and he just crushes everybody. And it's just like, hey, save some for the rest of us. You got to think, like, if he had both eyes and both legs, like, where would he be?
That guy is an absolute unit. He came up to me. You sent Jared and I a text message after nationals, and he calls his leg Peggy. Um, so he sent, and that run, that I mean, you guys did. I think they did 4 miles. We were around 9 miles. He sent a photo of Peggy just rubbed completely raw.
Oh,
It was just the grossest thing. But like, he didn't bitch about it that whole weekend. You have
yeah.
guys that are completely able-bodied that are bitching about logos on the back of t-shirts, and then you guys have guys like Gil, who's got he could make any excuse in the world that he wanted to, and he doesn't make a single fucking one.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of people that we like around.
Yeah. No, he's an absolute phenomenal human being.
Yeah.
So I got to ask, you kind of answered a lot of the stuff I was going to ask already, but how did that And at what point did that lead into you taking a lead role in the games itself?
Yeah, I bothered Jared for about a year before I ever got this job, and it was just like, hey, if you ever need help, I want to help. I want to help. I want to be part of this. Like I love this. It was I found a home as soon as I started competing here. I had been competing in CrossFit for many years, but this was really the place that I went to, and I was like, holy shit, these are my people. Like it was totally different than what I expected it to be. The people that I kind of like when you're doing anything in the shooting space, if you're not involved in the shooting space, there's a stigma, right? You're always gonna like you've got this stigma in your head, just like anything else. If you don't have experience with it and all you've ever seen of it is what's been fed to you, that's all you're ever gonna know. I went out there and I walked away from that. So I want to say there were 11 events in 2020. I did the first one, and then I did 8 more that year. I flew all over the country. I competed at every one. I would get off work on Friday, kiss my fiance goodbye, fly out that night, and then go like drive to wherever the venue was in the middle of fucking nowhere, find a hotel room somewhere, like show up first thing in the morning and just go and shoot all weekend and fly out Sunday night or Monday night and be back at work on Monday.
Holy shit. That's dedication right there.
That, well,
And,
like,
and it's, and it's because you kind of hit it. It's the community itself. Like most people are gonna be like, they're intimidating. Yeah, they may look intimidating, but it's kind of like the 3-gun community. Like they are the most inviting people I have met. And that's what kind of draws me, and that's what is wanting me to get more involved this year now that I kind of have the time. Like whenever I was on the shooting team, I had to kind of focus on specific shooting sports. But now that I'm out, I can pick and choose what I want to do. And it's like, I'm still going to be doing 3-gun because that's like my bread and butter. And that's what I love. And I love that community. But then I'm picking up and doing more tactical games this coming year because like I love CrossFit. I love the way it's organized. And then also I love the fundamental base shooting, and then to add some of the multi-gun action in there as well. It gives you different dynamics that you have to work on. And at the end of the day, it's all about being a better person than what you were the day before.
Yep, 100%. And the community is all about that, right? It's a bunch of people. There's a story from this year that we talked about it on our podcast yesterday, and it was about Tim Waddock. Most people know him as Waddock. Tim was obviously very competitive in 2021. He started building a house in 2022 and just kind of had to step away from the sport and focus on getting married and all the other things that he was doing. He came out and was competing in Ohio. Hepner was absolutely kicking the shit out of everybody the weekend that we all competed in Ohio. Like it was some of the best elite male competitive field that I've been in since nationals. I decided, I was like, yeah, I'll compete in Ohio. Nobody will compete in Ohio. I got there and I looked at the roster and I was like, well, fuck, this is everybody that beat me at nationals last year. I'm never going to get a goddamn trophy out of this thing. So Hepner was kicking the shit out of him. I want to say he was like, pretty close to like 200 match points ahead of him going into the last one, or 100 match points going ahead of him going into the last event. On the first shooting iteration, Hepner's gun went down, his rifle went down. He fired 2 shots out of his rifle out of like a 46 shot string. So you're talking about 440 seconds worth of penalties, plus you get penalized for not. So if you have a catastrophic malfunction, not only do you get the misses, there used to be a penalty applied for not firing the shots. So it would be unfair. You could game it theoretically if somebody doesn't spend the time on the firing line, that they could actually just like throw their pistol down, rifle down, and then, oh, it's bad, and then start doing their stuff. So there was a rule that was being applied to that. So he got hit hard with penalties. And Tim walked up to Jake right before awards and said, hey, I don't know how this is going to shake out, but I didn't win this competition. It doesn't matter what happened. Like, I didn't win this competition. Hepner kicked my ass all weekend, and I'm not going to win because of a technicality. And that, I think, like, that speaks volumes. And that kind of mentality is so evident and so like widespread throughout our community. People want to beat the next person. Don't get me wrong. They want to beat that person at their best. So like information sharing, training sharing, like everybody just helps one another out. Like if I'm going to go out there and I'm going to beat you, I want to beat the best version of you so that I know that I beat the best version of you, not I beat you when you were sick or because your gun went down or whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's that's the two comparisons I can see between three gun and tactical games, because in three gun it's like you don't want somebody to beat you because they had a better stage plan. You want somebody to beat you because they're technically sound with their marksmanship. And so people will be like, yeah, this is how I'm running my stage. This is exactly what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, you have to game plan around what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Sure. No, I learned that. So again, having never really done any three gun matches. So when I used to shoot, the only time that I would practice shooting would be when I would show up to the tactical games. So like I didn't have time. I didn't have access to a range. There was a bunch of different bullshit that I had. Like I made up excuses, right? So when I went and shot nationals in 2021 at RPR, we had a three gun stage. It was a two gun stage, but we had a two gun stage in the event. And I was friends with Jared at the time. I'd started working for the company, and he shot three gun. He's an excellent shot. He walked with me on my stage plan and just started talking through all of these things. And I'm like, holy shit, man, I was just going to run through here and shoot this really fast. Like, what do you mean? Like left foot on the rock when I hit my reload? Like, what the fuck are you talking about, man?
Yep.
And then I watched him do it. And it was one of those things that like, I understand technically it's not the best thing to do, but he was firing so fast out of his rifle that he caused a backfeed. Like he caused an issue with his rifle because he was shooting so fast at first. So he had to clear it. But just watching how methodical and calculated he was on that stage, he gapped the field by it was like 20%. It was ridiculous. It was. He maybe left 2 seconds out there total on that stage that could have been like the theoretical max for what that stage was. It was pretty impressive.
Nice. No, yeah, I love that. And I like that you're blending the different disciplines into what you're doing. Like that's being on your A game and like looking at what people want, which is awesome.
Well, so last year, we talk about it. You can't institute a million changes at once, right? There's too many opportunities for errors when you do, like before we got on, we were talking about the team event, the first team event. That was a big change. You don't want to institute 7 big changes at the same time and then try to just like, well, they'll figure it the fuck out. We have to execute things methodically. So last year was really about solidifying like the sport, right? Like, what are we actually testing? What are we doing? What is this going to be? I'm sorry, that was 2020. Last year was about elevating the fitness of a lot of the athletes in the sport, right? So if you go back and you look at the maximum weights from 2020 to 2021 to 2022, I mean, you're talking about significant increases, right? Like the idea of a 200-pound bag in 2020 was something that was like, nobody will ever be able to do this. Now you see guys in the elite, I mean, it's not even the elite division, every division that are just repping shit out with a 200-pound bag.
Yeah.
And then
my partner Andy Brown, he picked up a 200-pound bag by himself, threw it up over the yoke, and I was just like, Jesus, dude, you're
an animal. So this year we saw the 300-pound bag come into play, right? So it's like we pushed the needle on the fitness last year. We got people more fit throughout the year. This year, you're not going to see a lot of changes in the fitness, like as far as maximum weights, right? We're kind of getting to the top of what we can do there. Now what we can do is really start challenging people on their shooting abilities, right? Give them another thing to train for. So now you're going to see more technical shooting. You're going to see more 2-gun stages and matches. You're going to see more shorter stages that will have more shooting in them, like a physical element, but more shooting as well.
Nice.
I like the idea that you guys are keeping pace with the competition, and I think it's evident in the way that you guys incorporated red dots and pistols, which for a long time, people were foaming at the mouth. Like every single comment on that Facebook group was like, "Can we get red dots?" And I think you guys waited for for it to stop being a fad and for it to start being like a proven thing. And then now it's like infiltrated more of the divisions, with the exception of elite division. And I liked your reasoning. The elites came together, the people that actually like that competition affects, and you're like, we we're going to stick with irons. That's just the way we're going to roll. So I think it's a good combination of you guys pushing to forward the envelope in terms of competition, but also listening to your user base, which is awesome.
And it's you need to, right? Like all of us that work for the sport are competitors in the sport, right? And there early on, there was a lot of talk about that. Like, how can you they're cheating or whatever the fuck, like that's never been the case. Honestly, it's just a bunch of guys that really love doing this stuff got the opportunity to work for this company as well. And would you rather have a board of executives that don't know what the fuck is going on and don't care and like just arbitrarily doing shit and just kind of seeing what sticks, or guys that like are out there competing and really care about the final outcome, right? Like if these matches don't go well, if the company goes under, if something like that happens, like this is my livelihood, right? This is what I make a living off of. So I really give a fuck at the end of the day. And the red dot stuff, for red dots, that was definitely something that, like exactly like you said, we heard about it. You know, it was the gamers that first, like, and I'm saying the shooting gamers, and then guys in law enforcement started carrying them on their duty weapons, right? And that's when we kind of decided, like, okay, this evolution is happening now. You know, there's companies that are making level 3 holsters that have red dot, hoods on them. So we know that this is something that's actually going to become prevalent everywhere.
And you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, you waited for like law enforcement, like FBI, literally just this year. And I know this because I was working over there as an instructor for 4 months. They just instituted red dots for all their special agents and senior special agents.
Yeah. And it's, we're seeing it there. The thing that makes me laugh really often is how many people will comment on our Facebook and our social media, like, what is tactical about this? A good majority of our base of competitors are active duty military or law enforcement or veterans. Like these guys, and I'll see things. I saw one the other day and it was like, this is the sport for people that didn't want a GWAT ribbon from 2001 to 2021. Like, you have no fucking idea how many guys like either were like OGA or like legit worked and like real pipe hitters. Like, anyways, that shit irritates the hell out of me. And it's something that people that haven't done it, people that haven't experienced it from the outside, I can understand maybe a little bit about that. But like, I don't know, the overall idea of what fitness is and what being tactical is, to me just means like, hey, you're self-sustaining. You are pushing yourself to be better every day. You're healthy. Like, you're actually taking physical care of your body, because if you can shoot lights out and you're 60 pounds overweight, you're a liability. It doesn't matter. It's great that you can shoot.
You're a turret. What's that? I call those people turrets.
100%. Yeah. Please absorb the bullet impact for me. That's what I appreciate. Yeah. So anyways, that's a fight that we're constantly waging, and guys like you guys being in the sport and being out there, and like the people from the law enforcement community, from the government agencies, from the military that come out and support and shoot with us. Those are the guys that are the proof's in the pudding with those guys and girls. I don't mean to just say guys there, because there's a lot of our female base is, I would say, probably the amount of female competitors that are active duty military, veterans, or law enforcement is probably 70 to 80%.
Yeah.
So when you see our female competitors, most of them are like, they're stepping off their agency work. They're taking off their FBI. They're taking off their, DEA agent, plate carriers, putting some soft carriers in there, and then they're going out and competing in our sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of service, so I'm aware that you served in the Coast Guard, Nick. Matt and I were actually talking before this, and it's surprising that we got someone from the Coast Guard on before someone from like we haven't had anyone from the Navy, Air Force. Yeah, so you guys gotta step your game up. But the Coast Guard kind of flies under the radar. They don't get the credit they deserve. They got some really badass units. They do some really cool shit, and they have some great tactical training. So being someone with a military background, how relevant are the lessons that you've learned from the tactical games, and are there things that you would retroactively apply to your military service?
100%. So I'm surprised you've got one of us on first too. There's like, when I was on active duty, I think there were 41,000 Coast Guard members in the United States. There were more, the NYPD had more officers than we had like members of the Coast Guard at the time, right? So it's definitely a smaller service, but you're right. Like between the Hitrons and the MSRTs, and like I'm sure the organizations have all changed by now, but if there's a natural disaster, it was the Coast Guard, MS or the MSTs that would go out there first and be the ones that would open the ports up and get things going back on. So our idea of tactical is a little bit different than, they're not going out and they're not, we're not doing the typical things, right? They're not doing force recon. They're not, that's not the kind of thing, but there is still definitely an aspect of shooting and, the things that we take away, physical readiness, the things that we take away from something like the tactical games that are incredibly important to your job and the things that you do at the end of the day. So like the things that I would take away, I wish I would have understood the importance of physical fitness and the importance of knowing my weapon systems and testing my gear before I ever joined the military. I think my career would have been a little bit different, actually. And Matt, you'll like this one. So I was going to join the Marines. I had a Marine recruiter that I was working with, and my father was like, "Hey, like, what do you think about going to talk to the Coast Guard recruiter?" The Marine recruiter was like, we were ready. We were going to do it. I walked into the Coast Guard recruiter's office and he was like, "Hey, listen, here's the deal. I don't give a shit what you got in your ASVAB. Like the Marine recruiter wanted me because I had an 89 on my ASVAB. And the Coast Guard recruiter was like, I don't give a shit what you got in your ASVAB. If you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. So you can walk out that door and it's not going to affect me at all. But if you want to be here, we'll accept you in and you can come and do this for the rest of your life." And I was like, holy shit, that was cool. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And the Marine recruiter just continued to call me. I told him I was going to college, and because I didn't want to tell him I was going to the Coast Guard. I was like, I'm going to college, man. Like check in on me in a little bit. He's like, I'm gonna call you in 2 years. He called me. No shit. 2 years later, I like on the nose called me, and I answered the phone. It was a random number, and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Oh, this is I forget what the hell his name and rank was, but." It's like, "Yeah, I just made second class. I'm an E5 now. I just got done with A school, or I've been done with A school for about a year and a half." And anyways, so that totally went off topic on that. I apologize.
No, I almost joined the Navy. I went to MEPS, to go join the Navy, and then I found out I had a hernia, and had to go get surgery, all that kind of shit, and then talk to the Marine recruiter, and I was like, fuck it, let's do it. My parents are like, what the fuck? Like my whole life, my parents were like, you can join any branch of service except the Marine Corps. Then I made a career out of it.
So like at me going in, I didn't know I didn't have any members that had served or family members that had served. I didn't really know anything about the military. I knew very little. What I saw on TV was my only exposure to it. So I knew that the Marine Corps was the most badass group out of all of them. So to me, as soon as I saw that, I was like, well, fuck it. That's what I'm going to go try to do. I was at a point in my life where I had like zero direction and zero, I didn't know a fucking thing. I was an idiot. I was a true blue 19-year-old idiot. I went to college for like a year. I think I got 3 credits my first year, like just blowing my parents, little bit of money that they had to give me to pay for school. I was fucking around. I was dumb. So the opportunity came and I went to the Coast Guard recruiters like, all right, so if you're coming in, what do you want to do? I see your ASVAB score is pretty high. Right now we've got a bonus for cook. We'll give you $20,000 if you want to go become a cook. I'm like, I don't think that I want to become a cook. He's like, well, we've got this other cool rate. It's called an electronics technician. It doesn't sound very cool, but like if you get through school, we'll give you $8,000. And I was like, $8,000 is more money than I've ever had in my entire life. So yeah, I'm going to do that. And it was one of those things that it was serendipitous, right? Like I never would have picked that field if I had known that I was just going to I don't want to say sit around, that I was going to work on electronics. I know it says it in the name, but if I knew that that's what I was going to do, it wasn't necessarily what I would have chosen to do with my life. It's where I ended up. And it created a career path for me afterwards. So it turned out I was good at it. At least in some way I was good at it. And I was able to get recruited for work outside of the military. So after 7 years on active duty, I got out and I went and worked in the defense industry for about 10 years before I came over here.
You said
Nice.
something earlier that kind of struck with me. You wish you had known how to better prepare yourself, like physically. Um, and, you know, I would say we are all pretty bad at that. We kind of just want to jump into things. And if I could go back 20 years and tell my, 19-year-old self, stretch, warm up, don't do all the dumb shit you've done throughout your career. And granted, some things you can't help.
Yeah.
Operationally, like you're gonna do what you have to do to survive. But like just like through the training and all that kind of stuff, I wish I had paid attention to a lot of that stuff because now I'm 39 years old. I'm deaf. I can't smell. I have flat feet. I have all the back screwed up, neck screwed up, and I can still do everything I want to do, but I just think of what would my quality of life have been if I had taken the time to better prepare myself for certain aspects.
I think about that with strength all the time.
Mm-hmm.
My fiance is a personal trainer, and like I'm hard headed as fuck. I mean, like I've been exercising. I started out powerlifting, I got into bodybuilding, and then I got into CrossFit, and then now I train a little bit differently than I ever have before. But like I would never take advice from anybody else when it came to lifting. And
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could unfuck like 20 years of lifting because I would be so much stronger now and in such a better place. But I built my foundation of fitness on complete dog shit. It was
Mm-hmm.
just like nobody ever taught me how to do this stuff. So I didn't, or if they were teaching me, I just wasn't listening. So if I could go back, that would be definitely one of the things that I would do is like slow the fuck down. You don't need to half-ass squat at 315 and it looks like shit and like you're terrible, your back's all fucked up, you're not engaging your hamstrings or your glutes, just all quads. Like I would go back and undo all of that and start that stuff over again for sure.
Yeah. So kind of moving on, when the tactical games first steps into a location, what is your guys' process for designing and fine-tuning battles? And is there a theme that you're trying to get across to the competitors? Because what goes on paper isn't always what you see on the ground.
Yeah, 100%. So we have a game plan, right? If Jared's not competing, if I'm not competing, all myself, Jake, and Jared will sit down and we'll talk through all the stages, right? We'll talk through a basic idea of here's what we want to test. We have a long movement. We have a long movement because we want to make sure that you can't just be super fucking strong and win this competition, right? Like, let's knock that out. You can't be a 315-pound strong man that's going to come in. You have to be able to move yourself, right? Because foot movement's important. It's something that all of us have to do. There's a reason it's in every PFT that exists, right? Like you run, that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, we're looking for things that are going to test people's, we test capacity, we test strength, we test endurance. So we have a really strong understanding of what we're going to do, and we build workouts based on that. We'll set theoretical maxes, meaning like, all right, if there's the rep schemes 5-3-1, 200 can sit in the one, and we'll go through all that stuff. And the same thing with weights, and then we load out our equipment based on that stuff. And then just like anything else, you make this beautiful, well-organized plan. You get on site, and it's fucking sand, or it's like the gravel is ridiculous or whatever it might be. We then get a realistic plan based on what we've got, right? So first draft was this thing that was on paper. Second draft, all right, we've seen the ground, we've seen the layout of the range. We now understand limitations based on size, things like that. We'll adjust based on that. And then Thursday afternoon and Friday morning of our matches, we vet all of our stages. So like last year, I was at every single event. I vetted probably, I couldn't even tell you how many stages. Like we put bodies out there to go out there and test these stages. And it's always our ROs. We're changing them from battle bosses to ROs this year, by the way. So we take our ROs out there, any volunteers that show up early. We let them go out and run the stages because that's real data to try to drive. Like we can't have every stage running 15 minutes, or like you guys came in early tactical games and you saw there would be people that would finish in 8 minutes and people that would finish in 35 minutes. And you want to talk about fucking up a schedule. That's a great way to do it. So we try to make sure that these, like we have resets too, so that we can stay on time, making sure that all of those things kind of fit in this nice tight package, and that people are still getting challenged and having fun out there. Because at the end of the day, people aren't being challenged and aren't having fun, they're never coming back.
Yeah, I one of the biggest. So my first games was 2019 Fayetteville, the Range Complex, and I've done several since. But one of the biggest things that you guys improved on was the introduction of par times, because like you said, like they were the first time they introduced the 150-pound sandbag. Like it was an entire like cheering section, but man, like that one stage backed people up so badly. So huge improvement there. But talking about the entire preparation of identifying a range, putting together the battles, testing them, and then executing it, is there a particular games, like one particular location that you think it just all came together extremely well that you would hold up as the gold standard, or one that was just really memorable for you?
Oh yeah. There were, as a competitor, before I was part of the sport, definitely there were some of those. Since I've been involved with the sport, I think my favorite one, honestly, and Matt, we were talking about this event earlier, was the team event this year. And the big reason for that was our first team event was in 2021. It wasn't, I don't want to call it a disaster, because it was fun as shit. Everybody that was out there had a good freaking time. But we got off.
It was data collection, and it was testing evaluation. That's how you got to look at it.
Yeah, yeah, and it was. So we also ran into an issue with there. So all of the all the bays and all the ranges were all heading straight down this way.
Yep.
At the very end of that was the 360 bay, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So there was like some zingers flying over that 360 bay. We basically had to move an entire stage in the middle of a competition to another area and then get reshoots for it. And when we moved it, we switched over from paper to steel, and then the resets weren't happening, because you shoot 3-gun, you know how important resets are. If you've never shot 3-gun before, you have no idea that, oh shit, I'm supposed to be out there doing something if I'm waiting in line. Like, I'm actually supposed to be helping with this. People weren't keen to that yet.
And a lot of that comes down to having really strong ROs, or battle bosses before. Now you're calling them ROs, and a lot of that is driven by the ROs. And I think you guys have a good RO crew. Like, a lot of the people that you'll see at these events are people that are there time and time again, helping out, being involved in the community. And I think whenever you guys first moved that stage from the 360 bay up to the top area, Shannon was there, and there's another person there, Megan. I don't remember the other individual that was up there, but it's like they took charge, and they were like, we need help. We can't do this on our own. And they got people involved in helping reset.
Yep. Yeah. And that, like, it went from taking about 5 minutes in between each shooter on a 90-second stage to about every 2.5 minutes we were launching.
Yep.
So that time, you cut that down over 200. Remember, we have 200 shooters at our events, right? You cut 2 minutes and 30 seconds off of every shooter's part, or every shooter's time or reset time. It's going to speed things up. So the 2022 team event was definitely a demonstration of how you get put in a shitty situation, you learn from it, you adapt from it, and you grow, and you put on a better event the next year. I had so much damn fun at the team event in West Virginia this year.
Oh, hell yeah. Like, that was so much fun. I had a good friend of mine, Andy. Him and I were on the Marine Corps shooting team together, and like, we were game planning months in advance. And like, he lives in Indiana, I live here, and we were just communicating the whole time, and we would send each other workouts and everything. And my biggest weakness is my running, my endurance. And I thought I was preparing properly for it. And no, because those trails there, they offered no wind, no nothing. It was just, it was humid and hot. And we started our run at noon, and I got about a mile into it, and we ran our first mile in about 8.5, 9 minutes. And after we got past that mile point, I was like, Andy, he's like, what's up? I was like, stop, we're walking. he's like, you don't got any more left in the tank? I was like, no, we're walking. I was like, so I'm not a safety hazard, and so we can finish this games. I need to walk. And we did. And, I had been running, but I think a lot of it came down to that adrenaline. But like him and I were just so in tune with each other. We kind of knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we just had a blast. And like that's where I first met you at right before the award ceremony. I was like, "Hey, you're setting stuff up. Where do you need help?"
Yep.
And just hanging out with good folks. Like, uh, I just love the community.
Yeah, yeah. The run at West Virginia is always fun. The first year, so in 2021, Jared and I were literally like days out of COVID. I think I was 11 days out. I think he was maybe like 16 days out. I lost I lost like 15 pounds. I was down to like 185. I looked like people kept coming up to me and going, "Are you okay? Are you like, you look sick. Are you okay?" I was gray. It was fucking terrible. I remember trying to pick up I think it was only a 200-pound sandbag at the time. And I was like, yeah, something that, I've been shouldering forever beforehand. But yeah, and Jared had never lost at that point either. He'd never not been on the podium. And I'm like, I'm going to help you out with that one this weekend, bud. And Jared is a very serious competitor, right? He wants to win just like anybody else. He's out there. He's serious. He wants to win. That broke for him on that one. And it was like, hey, let's have fun. And after that, man, we had a freaking blast. And I think the team event lends to that. It lends to the serious competitors getting a different format and a different opportunity. The weight of like, this is all my responsibility and the outcome is all based on what I do comes off your back. And now it's about cohesion and working together to get things done.
And I think that's like a very important part because a lot of us, like in most of the shooting sports, is a very individual thing. There's,
100%.
and so it gives you an opportunity to kind of relive childhood dreams, or like whether you were in team sports or if you weren't, it gives you an opportunity to just work together and formulate a plan together and see how you work together and how you solve problems. Like me and Andy, like we come from the 3-gun community. And so we step up to a stage and we're like, okay, this is how we're going to attack this. This is where we're going to be here for this. And this is how I'm going to attack these targets from here. And so it's like, it's a very dynamic conversation between two people who instinctively want to win or have a goal that's set and just want to do good. And then we come off the line and then we're encouraging the other person, or we're saying, hey, this really worked for us. Here's some tips to help you along. This is how I would handle this. This is how I would attack these targets.
Isn't that wild? Like you will finish a stage and you'll go to somebody else and be like, hey, here's 10 things that I learned while I was doing that. Go out there and beat me with it. That's the case. And one of the things that I hear really often, and you touched on it, is guys and girls coming from 3-gun love the ability to shoot on the line with other people. You're not out there running a stage by yourself, right? You're out there. There's 4 other people out there with you, or in the team event, there's the 11 other people or 10 other people out there with you. It's a really cool opportunity to go out and really push yourself against one another, because you're always going to go harder when there's somebody next to you. There's no question about that. So that's definitely something that's cool. That's different about our sport.
So, the tactical games, it's been around for a little while now, and you guys do have iconic obstacles and implements that you guys use, from the rope climbs, the wall, to the heavy sandbags. Is there one particular implement that you think symbolizes what the games are about? And then what implement kind of makes you guys cackle, evilly whenever you're going to implement it into a battle?
There were a couple of them this year. So if you guys noticed, this year we slowly started implementing new objects. We'll call them objects, but new implements. We started implementing new implements. The yoke with the chains on it this year was one of my favorites. It's one of those things that you don't need to overload it, right? You don't need to make it a 300-pound sandbag vice 150-pound sandbag to make it harder. Actually, sometimes lightening the load, you make people go faster and it creates more instability. So it's something that we weren't testing often enough, right? In just a Zercher carry, this was creating instability as opposed to it being physically connected to your body. So that's definitely one that I really liked this year. The one that I think that symbolizes the tactical games and just like life in general, honestly, people hate it and they talk so much shit about it, but burpees, man, like it's so fucked up. But if you think about what a burpee is, right, you are literally taking your body, falling down to the ground, and then standing up. Unless you are physically injured, there is no reason that you cannot stand up off of the ground, right? You can be tired, you can get the shit kicked out of you, you can have the wind knocked out of you, whatever it is, you can force your body up off of the ground. And there are people that will sit there and lay there forever, and then there are people that will grind through it. And that's one of those kind of things that, like, you are pushing yourself mentally at that point. And that's what I love about the tactical games. It's a movement to me that, like, anybody can do. You can go out in your gym right now, put a carrier on, and just go do 10 minutes of burpees. See what the fuck happens to you and see how you feel after that, right? Like, it's people talk a lot of shit about burpees because they came, I'm sure they came from the CrossFit realm, but man, there's a lot of lessons to be learned about through burpees, in my opinion.
I don't know. Whenever the first time I had ever done burpees, it was in 2009. It was May of 2009. I remember it.
That's oddly specific that you remember that date, by the way.
I just remember. So prior to that, I had just graduated from sergeant's course and came back to the company, and then our company guns took us out on a 3-mile run. At the halfway point, we stopped and we did a ton of fucking burpees. and I, back then, people, I don't know how true this is. I never did the research, but they said this exercise was created by somebody who was in prison because it's the one exercise that you could do in a prison cell, and that's fully body weight. So whether or not that's true, I don't know, but it kind of makes sense because it takes a evil and sadistic person to come up with some shit like that.
So we, when we went through boot camp, we called them up downs, but it was really the same thing, right? I mean, it was down, you were down on the deck, and then you were up on your feet, and you were down on the deck, and you were up on your feet. Like, football camp, I mean, shit, we've been doing these things for years. It was just, now I don't want to say a practical application because I don't know what, but I guess it is practical. It's falling down and it's standing up, right? And, like, we'll usually implement or institute something about, like, stepping over something, because for us, like, we're really big on standards, right? I want you to do the same movement that Frank does, that I do. We're all doing the same shit. So that's why you'll see us put things like stepping over a barbell on burpees. Is, how do you know the rep's complete? Oh, it's not, I'm up top and my hips are locked out and now I have to prove it to you and it's on a judge to decide. It's, I completed my rep by stepping over something. Now it's actually complete. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we look for in our exercises and our movements.
Nice. We've talked about this a little bit already, but in terms of adding new divisions and implementing rule changes, a lot's changed. I did my first games in 2019. I came back at the beginning of 2020 when you guys went to Tradecraft in Florida, did the team games, and that's where Matt and I kind of ran into each other in 2021 with the El Cartel and all the other shenanigans that happened. But a lot of things have been implemented, and I would say, like, for the better. It's a much more streamlined process. I have a lot of confidence in the scoring and the competitive parity. But we already talked about the process between you, Jared, Jake, talking about these things. What's been one of the, I guess, longer and more contentious debates between the three of you? And you also talk about implementing changes in sequence. How far out have you guys talked about that?
Yeah, so that's we're I don't want to say there's arguments that happen, but, like, we have a command structure, right? Like, Jared's the owner. I'm the president, and then Jake does what he does. It is when we have debates, it is very much like that, right? Like, because at the end of the day, if this shit goes south, like, we lose a job, right? But Jared loses a company, something that he's invested himself into. So, like, a lot of our conversations are, leave it on Jake to allow him some anonymity to go out there and just, like, do what he wants to do. And then there are things that we usually don't argue about it beforehand. If it's like, hey, that's fucking dumb, change that, it's fucking dumb and it gets changed, right? It's usually when it has to do with anything about arbitrary standards, we'll always throw it out if it's got an arbitrary standard in it. And that is exactly like we talked about, like, is there anything that anybody could introduce, like a silly ass thing, like, carrying it over your shoulder in a specific way, or it used to be shooting positions, right? Like, what is kneeling? That was a question that used to come up all the time.
We got reverse kneeling, you have standard kneeling, you have double kneeling, you have this, you have that.
Can my ass cheek touch my heel? Is that still kneeling, right? Like that kind of stuff. So instead of forcing shooting positions now, we force slots. We put people at like, all right, here's about eye level, here's about chest level, here's about, here's ground level. Shoot it however the fuck you want, just stay inside behind cover. So like that, those kind of things, we don't really argue beforehand. There's not a lot of contention there. It's afterwards. And it's, all right, we do debriefs after every single event, right? And that's how the sport has evolved and how it will continue to evolve. What did we learn from this last event? Okay, well, we learned that, resets need to be down to 36 seconds for every time a target is out at 75 yards. It needs to be at a minute and 20 seconds if it's out at 200 yards, like that kind of stuff. Those are the kind of things that we really work through afterwards. But as far as like, we don't get into a lot of arguments. It's kind of, we follow that structure and that hierarchy pretty well.
Nice.
So we've kind of talked about, how it's felt to watch the community push each other and all that stuff. So I'll kind of, we'll move past that. And, but one thing I do want to ask, what would you say that the tactical games provides that other competitive venues don't?
Anonymity, if you want it, which is like, we have people that come out there and like, I'll use Greg Everett. If you don't know who Greg Everett is one of the founding fathers of Olympic lifting in the United States, right? He literally like wrote the book on Olympic lifting in the United States. The first match that I shot with him, I had no fucking idea who this guy was, right? It was just like, this guy is literally a god in the Olympic lifting world. I have no idea who he is. He coached, like him and his wife coached half the US women's Olympic weightlifting team last year. So you have an ability to go out there and just do what you want to do and not be judged for what you're doing, not be like, we're all kind of weird, right? We're all like, everybody's just out there. Like these people are putting themselves through intentional pain to feel better, like, or, cause they enjoy it for some fucked up, weird reason. And like, I suck at shooting. I get my ass kicked at shooting out there. I still go out there and do it. Right. Like, so it offers people the ability to kind of go out there and just be who they want to be and do what they want to do and not have to worry about like who's watching or what's going on. And like, people aren't going to pass judgment on you for what you're doing. As long as you're not fucking with them and you're not fucking with their good time, go out there and have at it. And I think that's a pretty cool thing about our sport for sure.
I just thought of another question, and this is kind of a little off topic but in three gun, we have the ability to squad, with each other. We can squad with friends and everything. And I know in the tactical games, it's a little harder just because you have different divisions and everything. But have you ever thought of having people squad within like elite class, like being able to, like, if there's more people like in intermediate and you had to do it in different groups, have you ever thought of opening it up on like practice score now that you're exclusively using that and getting it to where they can squad exclusively with people that they want to shoot on within their squad?
So the only reason we don't do that is weight changes, right? So if you're in, if you're an elite and I'm an intermediate and Frank's in tactical, then you've got in that same squad 3 different weights that need to be on the line. And then like the next group comes up and you have no idea who's going to be in what bay. So that's why we keep it that way. And that, if you're in the same group, you can get into line with the people that you want to shoot with, right? Okay. When we squad in the morning, you can definitely, as long as they're in the same division, you can squad who you want. That's ever since we've gone to squatting the morning of, we've allowed that. We don't put people.
That's right. I remember that now. Yeah. Like I just realized you did do that at the team event too. Like, hey, freaking no, this number through this number, hey, get in the line here, don't care where you go. And like those people in that line is who you're competing with. So yeah, I forgot about that. So you kind of reminded me, I guess you can say.
and that's another thing that like you guys have improved on, because when I first started shooting in the games, it was not uncommon for there to be like a heat with like 2 or 3 lanes. Just it was just 2 guys just running down lanes, and a bunch of us just watching like a bunch of assholes. So it's gotten significantly better. Now, sometimes people quit in the middle of battles at the end of day one, and sometimes that still happens. But you guys have gotten a lot more flexible with it, which I think is great.
Yeah,
we've talked about this a little bit already. So I would say.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it's important
absolutely.
for that. Exactly. Keeping a tight schedule is like, you want to be able to, if there's a squad of one person in it, that's a problem, right? That's an extra 15 minutes that we're adding on to everybody else's day. So that's definitely, we've worked to improve that.
Yeah, that's something I also picked up from Matt, because Matt, as the staff and CYC of the shooting team, he put on a lot of matches like at the Marine Corps level. And I would say his matches are probably like the gold standard for what I've shot while in the Marine Corps. But in terms of competitive pools or demographics, we've already kind of talked about this. So the joke I often make is like USPSA is comprised of type 2 diabetics with like $5,000 race guns. And then on the other side, I mean, I think you have like generalizations, right? You have the dudes who can fucking slay when it comes to shooting, but are in terrible shape. And then you have the dudes who are in really good shape, but they don't really do the whole dynamic shooting thing. So are there things, I think you guys are already doing some of this by incorporating more action stages into your competitions, but are there other things that you're doing to target like different demographics and try to bring them into the tactical games folds? And then you talked about like military, law enforcement already being such huge demographics. But is there a more concerted effort to like target some of these larger bases and try to bring in more competitors? Because like I started when I was stationed at Camp Lejeune. I saw you guys were coming to near Fort Bragg, and I was like, I got to get out there. And same with Matt, like you brought in two dudes from the military. I just think there's definitely a potential for more of that, like more journeys like ours.
Yeah, and a lot of that honestly was there were changes that needed to be made in the sport. And it was a lot of like we were talking about, the reason that the transition happened from Battle Boss to RO. Early on, Tim was a 10th group guy. Tim, I don't know how many combat deployments Tim had to Iraq and Afghanistan throughout his career, but I know it was a lot, right? Like Tim was a real pipe hitter. Tim did what he had to do. When he came back, when he started the tactical games, the idea was, I want to make this something that's like what I used to do to work up before I would go overseas. And when he would do that, some of the things like a common tagline in the tactical games previously was, this is the closest thing to war. What's that?
The tagline I'm familiar with is CrossFit meets combat.
Well, so yeah, the closest thing to war without getting shot at, right? So a lot of guys outside looking in were like, that's a fucking joke. Like, how do you take what I've done and what I've put my life into for the past however many years and turn it into a fucking sport? Like, get out of here. I don't want anything to do with that. The calling them battles, like that kind of things. There was a lot of, I don't think people knew that a guy that actually had done these things is the one that was leading this charge. So there was a stigma again that was created against it. That was like, this is all people pretending. This is all LARPers. Like, we don't want anything to do with that shit. And now I think that's completely gone away, right? So that's why we've kind of gone away from battle bosses, because people that had been to real battle were like, hey, I don't want this shit. Like, this isn't a battle. This is a stage. Want to call it a stage? Let's make it a stage. And that's why we've transitioned a lot of those things. So I think in that we're showing people, and that's like people that are in the military, people that aren't in the military. This is a sport. We are out there. We are doing fitness and we are doing shooting. This isn't war. We're not trying to simulate war. Do I think being a competitor in this sport and training to compete in this sport will make you better at your job if you have a job behind a gun? 100%. 100% it absolutely will. But this isn't war, and that's not what we're doing out there.
I mean, I'll be the first one to say, I wish there was something like this. Like, I wish I knew about these shooting sports early on in my career. I didn't find out about USPSA and 3-gun until 2013. I was a senior sergeant. No, I just pinned on staff sergeant at that point. And it's like, here I am, I'm a staff sergeant, I'm getting ready to lead a platoon of guys, and I am just now finding out about the shooting sports the way I did. And I use those lessons I learned from the sports to better train my Marines. I used it as a training aid. And I wish there was something like the tactical games earlier on in my career, because I think fundamentally it better physically prepares you, and it allows you to hone your marksmanship skills into what you're about to go into. Being able to see targets at unknown distance and being able to get those first round impacts, being able to go into a house, burn through targets really quick. It just fundamentally it prepares you. And yes, it is a sport, but it's also a training tool that can be utilized to help increase your lethality and your survivability in combat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like that's not coming from personal experience. That's coming from the thousands of guys and girls that I've talked to that are in the same role as you, right? Or that filled the same, we're in the same shoes as you, that are saying like, this is helping me in my day job because I'm stronger, I'm more confident, I know what the fuck I'm doing. Kentucky windage is like, oh shit, I can go up to an unknown target, assess where that target's going to be, and make a first round or a first shot impact. Like, that's how important is that to being out on the battlefield, or heaven forbid you're stateside and you have to pull the trigger, and you're a police officer, right? Like that could mean the difference between somebody's life being saved or not, right? So I think it's definitely important.
So moving on, so this last year, in 2022, you guys introduced skirmishes. 2023 is the addition of regional TTG training ran by individuals that you know and trust. What does the program for that training look like, and what is the benefit for getting involved with that training? And then what other options are there that TTG can provide for an individual basis to better prepare for a TTG event?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So with training specifically, we'll touch on skirmishes. Skirmishes were kind of got out of hand. So they started pretty early on. 2020, I think, is where skirmishes actually started. And the idea was we wanted more people out there doing their thing. The problem was it got out there and more people were doing their thing, and it was inconsistent with the product that we deliver. So people were going to these skirmishes and seeing some wild, wacky shit, and then walking away from it going, well, I am never going back to the tactical games ever again. It's similar to somebody that might have come in early 2019 and seen some of the things that were happening early on. Maybe like you went until midnight when you were only supposed to go until 5 p.m. Like that kind of shit would happen. So we wanted to get a round turn on that and really start to be able to control a little bit better the quality of what was being delivered for the competitors and the people that were getting into these skirmishes, which is now called training day. Training day, what you can expect is you'll show up in the morning and it'll be very similar to a tactical games event. So the first half hour that you're there, you're going to get squatted. You're going to get an athlete number. You're going to go through the basic general things. And then after that, you're going to get into a shooting warm-up. That shooting warm-up is going to change every single month. Like, how many people knew that there were shooting warm-ups? I didn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the kind of shit that you can like start to get people trained up on those things. You'll have generally three different shooting specific practices, right? So it'll be maybe 2-round groups, right? Like how quickly can you put a 2-round group in, where you don't deplete accuracy or you don't lose accuracy on it. That's a lot of what you're going to be seeing in the training days. And then after lunch, it'll go into a stage. You'll run a stage. Now, it's likely not going to be a full 12-minute stage. It might be, hey, here's 4 3-minute opportunities to shoot that will total up to what a 12-minute stage would look like. And here's how effective weapon manipulation is going to allow you to actually get to the next port, or a quick weapons transition is going to allow you to get a little bit more time in the end of it, or make you more efficient in what you're doing. So training day is definitely going to become more about preparing people to come out and be tactical games athletes in competitions, and the ones that are already competing, just putting more tools in their tool belt. As far as like everyday training, our training platform just underwent a pretty awesome renovation. So We announced it was either yesterday or today. Jacob Hepner is taking over our virtual training.
Nice.
If you want to talk about a guy that is like, one of the fittest human beings in our sport, it's definitely him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's proven that on an international stage 6 times that he can go out there and he can compete with the world's, some of the fittest humans in the world. And then he took the national championship last year, and people are like, oh, it's because he's fit. It's like, no, because that motherfucker was shooting 2,000 rounds a week,
Yeah.
every single week, because you gave him a Ferrari and he was out there doing everything that he could with it. That dude. So say
He
that
put
guy
the work in. He put the work in, and that's what it comes down
100%.
to. It's how much. It's how much do you want it? I think one thing that the games really exemplifies is, you know, you it takes a level and an ability and a drive and passion to win. You can't just rely on your fitness. You have to also be able to shoot. You can't just rely on your shooting. You have to be in shape. There's that special balance there. And, you know, he's extremely fit, but he showed this dedication on the marksmanship side that just pushed himself, even further, and he won.
Yeah. Yeah. He was like pretty fresh off of his, coming off of his CrossFit career when he came to his first event. He might have even still been competing at the highest level in CrossFit, and he got 4th. Like that you can only go so far based on that. And he got 4th at like a 20% differential. It wasn't like, oh, I got 4th and I was real close to winning. It was a 20-point shift in 3rd and 4th on that one. But training outside of that. So our overall training program, the new one's called Complete. That will have Hepner doing all the fitness programming. Kalarina Key, who's another female elite competitor, she is also a chiropractor. She's going to be doing the warm-up portions of it. And then Sal Hernandez, who is, without a doubt, I mean, his team, I think, won TPOA this year. They were top 3, I'm pretty sure, in SWAT Roundup. The guy, he finished 3rd, or he was, on the leaderboard for nationals as well. He's an amazing shooter. If you've seen his wife's progression in shooting, his wife shoots like 95% now in tactical games. She's unfreaking real. It's, I'm sure there's some back and forth there about who taught who, but Sal's definitely the one that, like, he's now giving all the training shooting side of it. Specifically for guys and girls that, like, work in squad cars or make their living behind a gun. We've got another training program called Shift. Justin Betancourt is the guy that heads that up. He was I want to say he was in the Army. He did like maybe a tour in the Army, got out, and now he's a law enforcement officer in pretty sure it's Tennessee. He now is writing programming for guys that work in body armor all day and girls that work in body armor all day, because people don't necessarily understand this, but if you've got an extra 40 pounds of kit on you every single day when you're walking around, or you're sitting in a car, getting out of a car, getting into a car, getting out of a car, you're putting a lot of fatigue on your joints and different parts of your body that sitting at a desk all day doesn't necessarily do to you, or people in other occupations. So, like, preparing those men and women for longevity and how they can actually, like, stay healthy, like we were talking about, for their entire lives. So after their career is over, how they can continue to be healthy. We also have our speed and agility programming as well, and that's designed specifically for, this one's run by Amanda Cherry, who's a strength and conditioning coach here in Austin. That one's designed for action shooters. Like, your ability to maneuver and to manipulate and actually get around on your body is incredibly important when you're shooting 3-gun, right? It might not have been before, but now the sport's evolved, and now you have guys that are really fucking fit that are out there moving around, moving faster, cutting, unstable objects. You're all over the place. The ground's never flat where you're shooting. It's not like you're shooting on concrete, right? So that programming is designed specifically for people like that, which is pretty awesome. So we're trying to cover the full array of people in our space and then adjacent to our space as well.
Yeah, I noticed Dave Hartman from the 3-Gun Show has been putting a lot of stuff out on the speed and agility work. Him and I were talking about it quite a bit earlier in the year. Yeah, he's loving it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and why not, right? Like, at the end of the day, if you can dedicate 45 minutes to an hour of being healthy, not just today, but like longevity later in life. I don't want to be a shitty 65-year-old. I want to be the 65-year-old that I see at that, like, the CrossFit affiliate or at Planet Fitness that's out there just fucking crushing it. That's what I'm going to be.
Yep.
Oh yeah. So talking about the future for the games, and I realize there's many different ways to dissect this because really the games it's a competition at face value. But there's also we can talk about its future as a brand, and we can talk about its future as a community. But what do you as president, what do you see in the near and far future for the games? Any like widespread ambitions that you guys are chasing after? And you can be as vague as you want because we know that you guys have some great stuff coming up. Just curious to pick your brain in terms of yeah, where's the game's going to go next?
So I want to be, and I don't mean I personally, I mean I as in the tactical games. I want to be a part of the group that changes the stigma about what shooting is, about what being a firearms owner in America is, and what owning an AR-15 is, and ensuring that the Second Amendment lives on forever, right? That's something that is like at the heart of our company, what we are absolutely all trying to do. The way that you do that, in my opinion, is you get everybody in America shooting, right? Like if everybody shoots, then people realize there was a stigma before because people didn't know. All they saw of an AR-15 was like, oh, my son was playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare, or I saw it in a fucking movie on television, and a soldier was blowing somebody up with it. That's all people knew. They didn't know that like, oh, there's guys that go out and girls that go out and shoot 3-gun on the weekends. There's guys and girls that go out and shoot tactical games on the weekends. There's guys and girls that are out there doing whatever the hell. Like that's near term and future. We want to ensure that the Second Amendment and the right to own whatever kind of weapon system that you want continues on in this country, and that like you're not going to fix a fundamental problem with the culture in America by taking away AR-15s. It doesn't happen that way.
A fair point. That's honorable. So last question. If I was an active duty service member right now, which I'm retired, so I can't be anymore, and I was looking to go to my first tactical games, what would you say to me?
Be prepared to eat a piece of humble pie. Like there are a lot of people, and we see this. It's not just in the people coming from the military. It's anybody that comes out to the sport, right? It happens a little bit more in the military when guys come from special units specifically, where they're known to be the best of the best.
Yep.
They come out and they get beat by a dentist or a doctor or like a fucking accountant, right?
A plumber or a 15-year-old girl.
And like what you have to understand is that you're absolutely an elite soldier. You're absolutely an elite airman. You're absolutely an elite sailor, whatever you might be. This is a game, right? And people are out there and they've been working at getting better at this game, at this sport. You can be one of the best fucking soldiers out there. You're gonna get the shit kicked out of you if you go play basketball against some people that are playing at a collegiate or a professional level, right? You're gonna get the shit kicked out of you. Think about this the same way. There are things that you will take away from our sport that are absolutely applicable to your job and will make you better at your job, but this is not your job. So be prepared to come out there and get the shit kicked out of you by a dentist. And then at the end of the day, get better because of it. Understand that there's something to progress forward. So it's just like anything else. It's a learning opportunity. And if you treat it as such, you're going to come out of it better.
And I love that you brought that up because whenever I first got into the shooting sports, like I was one of those guys. I got out there, I shot. I think I came in last place in my first match.
Yeah.
But I was shooting with an EOTech and a 3-power magnifier. And you're shooting 6-inch steel targets at 350 yards. And it's like, of course, the EOTech's not going to be good. But there was another aspect too. Like I just didn't know how to shoot the way those guys shot. And a lot of guys come out to competitions with these preconceived notions that they had that they have the best marksmanship training that the military has to offer them. And I'll be the first one to say, no, you don't. And I can't say that because one of my main missions whenever I was in charge of the Marine Corps shooting team is to bring relevant marksmanship training to the Marine Corps. And, our program, like James Gill, he kind of started it in the Marine Corps, really bringing a lot of the action shooting within the Marine Corps shooting team. And it just wasn't him. It was like John Browning, Aaron Farmer, Nate Stocking, like guys like that. But then, whenever I took over, it's like I had to shoot bullseye pistol and I wanted to commit suicide on a daily basis. Like, I hated my life. But it gave me an appreciation, and I did learn a lot of really good lessons out of shooting that sport. And I really did hone in my fundamentals. So whenever I did get back to shooting 3-gun, I was that much better. I went into that sport with so much more control and so much a better understanding of the fundamentals, to where now my level is just that much more elevated. But whenever we go out and we teach from competition. What we take the best lessons we have learned from competition, and we bring that to the big Marine Corps. That way they are getting the best training that they can to increase their lethality if they have to go to combat.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, why not take things from the guys that have like sub 1 second splits, right? Like, there's these guys are shooting it accurately, right? Like, just the draws, the things that you see, like kind of it's an Instagram reel, a lot of it, but is your draw 12 seconds and you need to work on this now and get it down towards that, like, getting into that 2-second time frame, or getting into that, like, drawing on target. I mean, obviously, like, taking as much of that as you can from other disciplines and learning and absorbing and learning, like, why the fuck wouldn't you want to do that? Mm-hmm. I think if you go into it with an attitude that I am the best at this, I have nothing to learn, you're never going to learn anything, and you're always going to be in the same place that you are today.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, I really enjoyed this conversation. This is really fun. I've been wanting to do this. I mean, shit, Frank knows. I've been wanting.
We wrote these questions 6 months ago.
Yeah. Oh, like we've been hungry to do this, and I'm really glad you accepted and you were interested in doing this. I'm looking forward to seeing you at future games. I really hope we can get more involvement through, specifically for me, the Marine Corps, get guys in the Marines out there. But thank you again. And, this is kind of Christmas time, even though this is being released after Christmas, but Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year.
Thank you guys both very much, Frank, Matt. It was great being here, and I appreciate you guys, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you both as well.
Yeah. And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, if you want to reach out to Nick or any of the guys at the tactical games and learn anything, I'll have their information in the show notes. That way you guys can get a hold of them. Or if you have specific questions for us to ask them, let us know. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.